David Blaustein checks in with us. It's got to be crazy, David Blaustein, who's in New York. Are you inside the bubble, David Blaustein, or your office is outside that Times Square bubble?
I'm always in the bubble.
Oh, boy.
What?
Doesn't ABC...
I know sometimes you're on the bubble. By the way, hello, Kelly.
Hello, David. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Doesn't ABC have studios like inside Times Square?
Well, ABC does. ABC News Radio, that's a different story.
Uh-huh. You're in Secaucus.
No, I'm actually at our studios on the Upper West Side.
Oh, okay.
I'm not covering the Super Bowl.
Oh, I know. But you're part of the extravaganza, though, right? You're taking in some of
I'm not part of the extravaganza. I am a walking extravaganza.
You're not taking in any of the sights and sounds? You're not going down to Super Bowl Boulevard and hanging out and...
No, I did a little bit of that yesterday. There really hasn't been time for me. I went down. By the way, Radio Row. Have you ever been to Radio Row at the Super Bowl?
I have been to Radio Row, yes.
That is a circuit. I mean, it's a carnival. It's amazing. And by the way, if you're a football fan, it's the greatest place in the world. I mean, I went there yesterday to do an interview to try to interview some famous people that were not football players. And I wound up having a very nice conversation with Darryl Tapp and his family. Darryl Tapp, who is the linebacker for the Washington Redskins, and really my mortal enemy because I'm a Cowboys fan. But I put that aside, and I will tell you that he is a very, very nice man. And as I'm walking out, Emmitt Smith walked right by me. And, of course, as a Cowboys fan, I did not have time to drool all over him. I had to go run uptown to cover the Bruno Mars press conference. But, yeah, I mean, you're in that room, Radio Row, and you are just tripping over professional football players, Hall of Fame football players, and wannabe athletes and people who shout very loud, call themselves sports talk show hosts.
Did you brush up against Jerry Seinfeld yesterday while he was making the rounds?
I did not see him, unfortunately. I was not in the vicinity of that greatness. I have seen Jerry, though. I've seen Jerry walking on the streets, actually, but I did not see him yesterday as part of the festivities known as Super Bowl week here in New York City.
Did you accost Jerry on the streets, or did you just let him be?
I most certainly did. Of course I did. That's what I do.
That's right.
I generally leave celebrities alone.
All right,
generally.
All right, let's get to it. Movies this weekend, Labor Day and the Awkward Moment. Let's start with Labor Day starring Kate Winslet and Josh Brolin. What do you think?
Well, the first thing I want to tell you about Labor Day is this is directed and written by the great Jason Reitman. And Jason Reitman, who gave us Thank You for Smoking and Juno, Up in the Air, and I think the very underrated Young Adult. I have an extremely high opinion of Jason Reitman. I look forward to seeing his movies. I look forward to seeing his next movie, but I really want to forget Labor Day.
Wow.
Really?
That's harsh.
Yeah, this is a movie where it just seems like such an obvious attempt, at least to me, for Jason Reitman to make an Oscar-caliber chick flick, I guess. He does humor very well. I mean, he's been very good at finding the humor in very dramatic situations in all of his previous movies. Some of his films are very heady. They're multi-layered. Some of them are complex, but they're almost always very funny. There's nothing funny about this movie, and I believe that was intentional. And it's one of those films that's really manipulating you and trying to tell you how to feel instead of just letting you feel. Now, the one thing that he does really well in this movie is the casting. I mean, hiring Kate Winslet, getting Kate Winslet to do a movie is always going to be a home run, a grand slam, if you will, since it's Super Bowl weekend, a touchdown with a drop kick, I guess. But, this is one of those things where Kate Winslet could take the worst script and the worst directing and find the truth in those moments that will make you feel something. You almost immediately have empathy for her, and she's so forlorn in this movie, and you have Kate Winslet playing forlorn, and you're like, oh, wow, yeah, you can grab onto that. But unfortunately, this movie is not written or directed to sustain that emotion and make you organically feel that way. So by the end of the movie, when you should be moved, and I'm not going to tell you in which direction because I don't want to give anything away, you're like, meh.
That's too bad.
And two good actors.
I like Josh Brolin. Yeah.
Two really. Josh Brolin also very good. And the guy that they hired to play the young Josh Brolin, also very good as a convincing young Josh Brolin. But it's just this. I just don't think this movie is particularly good.
All right, fair enough. All right, the other one out this weekend, That Awkward Moment with Zac Efron.
And this turns into that awkward review because I only saw the first 40 minutes of this movie for a good reason. I had a family emergency and I had to leave the theater. In fact, I found out a couple of minutes before I went into the screening that I may have a family emergency, and I sat in the very back of the theater in the last seat next to the exit. And it turned out I had to go. Everything is fine. Don't worry. I'm sure your listeners aren't worried, but everything is okay. But I will say I enjoyed the first 40 minutes of this movie, despite the fact that it was pretty formulaic and predictable. It's got Zac Efron, Michael B. Jordan, who so should have been nominated for an Oscar this year for Fruitvale Station, and Miles Teller, who's an incredibly promising comedic actor, and I think there are a lot of good things in store for him in his career. They play three best friends in New York City. Michael B. Jordan's character has just been dumped by his wife. She's been cheating on him. His two buddies, played by Efron and Teller, they're players, if you will, and they have a roster of women. Literally, they call it a roster. And they don't want to be in a relationship, and they can try to convince Michael B. Jordan that he needs to be the same way, and they make this pact that they're all going to be like that. But it becomes very clear at the point where I left, it became clear that things weren't going to quite turn out that way. And I'm pretty sure I could write down on a piece of paper how this movie ends, and I'm also pretty sure I'd get it right. This is an R-rated movie, and it's pretty raunchy, but I laughed a lot, despite the fact that it was pretty predictable and formulaic. So you take that information and do with it what you will. Now, there's a game on Sunday night and a lot of commercials that should be funny as well. So I think a lot of people might be focused on that.
Do you have a prediction, Broncos or Seahawks?
I predict that I will be drunk by the third quarter.
Ladies and gentlemen, you don't call him the best color man in the business for nothing. He's David Blaustein. David, thanks for checking in. Be good. Have a happy Super Bowl Sunday, and we'll talk to you next week.
Take care, McGraw. Bye, Kelly.
Take care.
David Blaustein here gives a thumbs down for Labor Day and didn't finish the awkward moment.
Yeah.
8:28, traffic, weather, news. Then David Hunn talking about that Ram story he broke. It got the wood in the Post-Dispatch about Stan Kroenke buying 60 acres in California. That's coming up next.